837 governorship candidates jostling for the #1 seat of the state. And we have about 10,240 candidates also jostling for the 993 assembly seats across the country. And what does this tell? Looking at the election that panned out yesterday and some that we dovetail into the Sunday morning today is the crux of what we're going to be looking at. My name is Philip Omo-Gupon, and I'm being joined by a seasoned legal practitioner, Alakwe Mbanefo. Thanks for coming, Alakwe.
You're welcome.
We witnessed yesterday's election across the country, looking at the governorship and the state assembly elections. And what are your impressions about the performance so far of the electoral umpire as regards quick arrival of electoral materials and course officials?
Yeah, that's a very great question. After the February 25th election, you are aware that political parties did complain of the shortcomings of the electoral umpire, INEC. And INEC did promise the whole nation that come this election that there's going to be improvement on the election, the procedure, and all about the election. However, yesterday was 18th of March 2023, wherein the nation has gotten high expectations that looking at the shortcomings of INEC on the 15th February election, that the expectations were high that INEC was going to perform greatly yesterday. The reports that we got from the states of the Federation shows that INEC fell short of those expectations. In the history of Nigeria, this is the first time we are reading in today's Vanguard that 20 persons was killed yesterday all over the nation during the election. We have not had it so bad in this country. And we thought that with what happened on the 25th of February, that the security agencies would have, taken the challenge of ensuring that this election was peaceful. Even we are shocked also that despite the voters' apathy, because the turnout of voters were very, very poor, that probably that could reduce violence. But unfortunately, because the election has to deal with the governorship election and the House Assembly election, which its stakeholders are the states, governors, and the state legislatures. It was like a war. And so, but let me take it from this, that from what is happening now in this country, I could read it from the point of view of Anarchists. Anarchists describe law as a cobweb that is too weak for the strong and too strong for the weak. That law is like a cobweb, which is too weak for the strong and too strong for the weak. So it appears that elections in Nigeria are just like what Anarchists described. It is now becoming, too weak for the strong and too strong for the weak. So what we observed yesterday is like a theater of war, where ordinarily a kind of mafia situation where the political party that has the strongest stocks and the strongest power to purchase votes are now seen as those who are making progress. And if the party, if you're a candidate and you are a gentleman and your party want to follow the rules, it appears that you don't have anything on the table. Okay. And so the point I'm making is that Nigerians are, highly disappointed about what transpired yesterday nationwide in terms of violence and in terms of vote buying and in terms of INEC not delivering. And most unfortunate was the fact that in Lagos State, we had a report that reporters were being abducted, and we are being assaulted. Vanguard newspaper, 5 reporters, was equally beaten up by thugs. And Arise Television's news crew in Lagos were equally abducted, beaten up and assaulted and taken to unknown places. And this is not expected in a civilized clime. It's not expected in a country like Nigeria, where we boast that the system of government is democracy. Unfortunately, that is what is on ground. But from what we can see, this is no democracy.
Okay, in as much as you spoke directly about the issue of violence and the deaths recorded, I think we're going to be looking at that as the show progresses. But let's look at the performance of the electoral officials. We had in February 25, where in some units, they were late arrival of electoral officials and even materials. But did you feel disappointed in any way with that aspect of performance in terms of late arrival of election materials and officials characterizing major centers? Did you feel disappointed? Was that what featured yesterday, or was your perception in that regard?
Yes, I'm looking at this election from the overall view of what transpired in the entire nation. For instance, in Bayelsa State, where the former president Goodluck Jonathan voted, in some part of the Bayelsa State there, the reports were saying that talks burnt electoral materials on arrival, and that ought not to be. And the same reports were getting in certain part of northern states that talks was used to burn the electoral materials. But then the question was that we expected that the security agencies, INEC would have engaged security agencies, and ensuring that none of this happens. And a situation whereby, INEC has no reason, of course, not to make sure that these materials arrived. But the point we're making is that we did not expect any improvements in what transpired 25th of February, in the 18th March election. Okay,
we've had the peace accord, to find a way to bring a lasting solution to the outburst of anger or violence among political party and their agents, but that seemed not to be working as we are seeing right away. And we also expect that, the law enforcement agents will rise to the occasion, not to be able to tackle these headlong. But you seem to suggest that the electoral umpire should be should bear the brunt in terms of this whole violence that took place. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, they should, because if you say somebody an umpire, that means he's in charge. It's the duty of the INEC officials to report to the IGP some of the challenges they were having. And it's also left for the IGP to ensure that the officers are mobilized and the right education. And a situation whereby the IGP sends officers to polling units, they're not armed. And if an officer is not armed and is not in a polling unit, how can he be able to tackle the issue of votes, snatching of boxes, and how can he deal with the issue of violence in the polling units? Having the officers at the polling units without being armed is as good as not having any police officer there.
Does that fall in the purview of the electoral umpire, or is it now the responsibility of the law enforcement agents like the police force under the IGP to make sure that issues about crime or intimidation of voters or violence is tackled headlong? How does that arise from the electoral umpire? Because there was show of force by the law enforcement agents prior to the elections, and the electoral umpire under the watch of Professor Mahmoud Yakubu does not call the shot when it comes to deploying law enforcement agents.
Yes, I agree with you on that. The electoral umpire actually cannot do the job of the police. The primary duty of the police is to protect lives and property of the people. And the point I'm making is this: if the Electoral Act is saying that officers should not be armed at the polling booths, then that is a minus on that aspect of the law. And so, but where, like what happened yesterday, where 20 persons lost their lives, then you cannot say that is an excellent, outing.
Yes, in as much we condemn that, but the aspect of you saying that is a minus, in terms of the provision of the law that law enforcement agents that are featured in the polling units or around polling units are not carrying arms, don't you think if they were to carry arms, or the reason for that was not to, raise tension while the voting exercise is going on? Because we've had issues where, if there was an engagement of those who caused mayhem, who tried to steal ballot boxes, and if there was an engagement by the police force in polling units, that could cause a lot of confusion, which I believe made it possible for that arrangement for policemen deployed to polling units not to carry arms. But that does not take it away from the fact that those who now carry arms should be logistically, placed around the polling units to arrest such occurrence that may occur.
Yes, note that Nigerian police officers are also Nigerians. They're Nigerians, so they're entitled to stay alive. And like what happened yesterday in some parts of Lagos, where thugs will come to invade polling units and all that. If you're a police officer and you're not armed, and you now see thugs at his arm to the teeth, what will you do? You have to escape so that your life can be saved. And so it is a minus on the side of the umpire, INEC, is also a very big minus on the side of the IGP, because you cannot send people to war without arms. So what we are observing now is that it appears that election in Nigeria is now changing from what it ought to be to a situation whereby the man who is having more talks, a man who is having more money, appears to be the person that is the end of the day.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, the question therefore is, if the INEC declares you a winner, the court will ask you if there have been substantial compliance, and you go and protest to court. And one of the things you have to prove before court is whether INEC has actually applied the substantial compliance in the conduct of that election. All that is changing right now because it also depends on what the court means about substantial compliance.
Okay.
But in this case right now, if your case is a case of thuggery, that there were thuggery, there were violence, and there were this and that, and the court also wanted to see was anybody arrested, and what transpired at that particular polling unit. Now, it becomes difficult to prove when you don't have anything at hand.
Okay, but
to
still
say
looking at
yes.
the issue of nipping violence in the board, are you not looking at other possible factors that must have played out yesterday? Because at the start of the day, before the election proper, we saw military checkpoints, checkpoints also manned by policemen at strategic locations to give impression that, yes, that this election, they are going to ensure that they tackle violence or the perpetrators of that headlong. But don't you think there could be other factors that could have necessitated the political thugs, to find an easy way to disrupt the election in some polling units? Or was it that some powers that be, also, was responsible for what featured yesterday? Otherwise, why couldn't the law enforcement agents that showed desperation to tackle violence headlong at the start of the election, why couldn't they arrest such situations as you just raised?
Yes, actually, the checkpoints where you have military men and police, to me, is of no moment if at the end of the day the polling units are not manned by both the army and the police to avert the issue of ballot box snatching and the issue of people talks coming to assault or disrupt elections.
Would that not intimidate voters if the military is found in polling units? Because the provision doesn't allow that.
The essence of this whole exercise is to ensure that you have a free, fair, and credible election, and you cannot have a free, fair, and credible election
if there's no safe atmosphere.
Yes, and so having road blocks and all that along the roads, when the places that the action is taking place is left vulnerable, it makes no sense of the whole exercise.
All right, it's Nigeria Decides, and I've been speaking with the legal practitioner Alakwe Mbanefo, who will be extended in front of this discussion after this break. Do stay with me.